Good morning, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. What a day. What a good day it is today. All right. If you guys have never seen a Gnomon art jam before, welcome. Today we're going to be sculpting in ZBrush, listening to some tunes, and making a random character based on a prompt, which is going to be randomly generated. So if you guys have any questions as to what I'm doing along the way, please feel free to ask in chat. I am here to answer questions about what I'm doing, or if you got just general art questions, want to chat about any certain topics, whatever, let me know, and I am happy to help. And we'll kind of start from there. So first I'm going to add this to the stream. This is what we ended up making last stream. So you can kind of get a little glimpse of what we did. This is a randomly based character using a D&D generator, or using some D&D dice rolling to roll D20 style, roll dice 20 to create a background and a prompt for this character. So you can kind of get a better glimpse at what that is here. And what we did was we started from scratch. We started from a prompt and we started from a base mesh and kind of worked our way across to get to this. Even if you look at what this is one of our first sculpts here. So you see I was posing this base mesh with this kind of generic planes of the face head, which is available up here, which is what we'll probably end up using again today. We'll see. And then getting to where we got to, which is here. I'll turn the color off so you can see the difference just from a pure sculptural level. So this is like version 5, and this is version 1. Kind of posing this and sculpting in pose and playing around with some of that. As always, if there's any issues with the sound, if my mic sounds bad, if I'm too loud, if the music you can hear in the background is too loud, just let me know, and I'm happy to adjust that stuff so we can make it sound good. Right on. Okay, well, let's get started into the dice part of this. So like I said, we're going to randomly generate a character here. So I'm pulling this stuff up. I know it's a little hard for you guys to read. I'll try to full screen it if possible. And I've been debating some of this, but what we're going to be doing is using D&D Beyond and some dice rolling that you can actually do on Google. If you just type dice roller, you can get a free dice roller here, and it lets you choose all the types that you want to, which is kind of cool, which is nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to randomly select this stuff. The first thing is I did this last time, and I'll actually pull open the character that we did before, which is this character. So we ended up making this character and rolling stats from the very beginning. And what this does is it gives us a character that we would never, and a prompt that we would never expect. So this is why I kind of like doing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to manual, and we're going to start, and we're just going to go work our way left to right. So I'm going to roll 4d6, which is click each of these, and then I'll hit roll. And then I subtract the lowest number, 1, and that will be our strength number. And we're going to go left to right. So I can just hit roll again. Our dexterity will be 9. We'll hit roll again. Again, removing the lowest number, constitution will be 12. Intelligence, we're going to hit roll again. Intelligence is a 13. Wisdom is a 13. And charisma is a 12. So nothing crazy high on this character. And we're going to make everything on this character randomized. So we're just going to start from the very, very, very beginning and see what we get. I know it's a little hard for you all to read because the text for some reason doesn't come across great. So I apologize about that. But if there's any questions about what's on the screen, let me know, and I'll try to make it the best that I can for you. All right. So now we're going to go to our race. And I'm going to just choose the player's handbook that gives us 10 races. So what I can do is I can just click this D10 here. I'll re-roll that. And whatever this is what we're going to get. So 5, half elf. You can select that. If we really want, we can choose these, right? Like I could roll a D5 or a D6, 2D6. There we see what we get. A 1 and a 3. 1 would be, I guess, I was going left to right, so that would be strength. 3 would be constitution. If we wanted to do this, we could do this on all these, but I'm just going to pick some random things, maybe after we pick our background and our class. So we could do the same thing with class. This is 12. There's 12 available classes if you don't use the other thing. So I like to roll twice and pick the one that feels the best. 1 and 2, so barbarian or bard. Chat, you guys have any interest in seeing a barbarian or a bard be made today? Let me know what you think. We're half elf so far. Let's figure out what. So far we got 1 vote for bard. If you go into description, you can choose your background here. There's 54 of these backgrounds. So what I do is I actually want to roll a D100. I'm going to go to the wizards one. And I have a D100 here. So I just hit roll. Oh, I don't want to count to 91. I don't want to count to 90. 44. So I know that's 10 from the bottom. This is 54. 3, 2, 1, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4. So sailor. So this is a sailor background. Our last background was a noble. We ended up making a half orc rogue noble. So right now we have a half elf, either barbarian or bard. We got 1 vote for bard, 2 votes for bard, and 1 vote for barbarian. It should definitely be. What would they? This stuff doesn't really matter, but you can always add these nice little elements here, like maybe primordial, because that includes like the water languages. Skill versatility, maybe this is where it's like, okay, if they're a bard or if they're a barbarian, what would they be? And it's kind of a fun thing to say, like, okay, they would have been a sailor. Okay, I think I'm gonna go. They're very slow. This dexterity is pretty poor, so this is not going to be the best of this character if you were to play it. But I'm kind of feeling like a bard. I think a half-elf bard feels good. We're making a random character in D&D Beyond, and we are going to kind of have performance then. And we're going to make them based on the prompt. A half-elf sailor bard, and probably deception for sure if they're a sailor, right? Well, they're not a pirate. Let's be clear. They're not a pirate. They're a sailor. So that's important to remember. If we want to, we can go through and pick all these things. Musical instruments. We'll just use the old dice roller here. It looks like there's 10 of those, so I'm going to click 3d10 and see what we get. 2, which is the drum. 3, which would have been the dulcimer. And 8, which would have been 2 from the bottom, would be the sham. Anybody know what a sham is? I looked this up the other day. Half elf out? Yeah. We'll have to put a coin for your Witcher on later. It will mute the stream, just so you know, at some point if you watch the replay, but I think it'll be worth it to have that song on here. Acrobatics, why not? Persuasion for sure. And survival. There's sailor, they should be surviving. All right. We could pick spells if we want, might as well. Cantrips, gotta go with the classic one. Minor illusion, classic one. Charm person, gotta do that. Sleep is always good. Hideous laughter, and why not just fairy fire? Cool. Equipment. I feel like as a sailor, you'd have a rapier, so we're gonna go with that. Entertainer, probably. And then one of those 3 instruments that we had before, which was the sham, the dulcimer, and the drum. Let's go with the sham. It's like a flute. It's like a little reed-based instrument. kind of like one of these things. I realized you guys couldn't see me, but that's to make it so hopefully the text is a little bigger. And then we'll give him a small stone with a hole in the center, or a trinket, or a rabbit's foot. We'll give him a small stone. All right, this is all fun, but now what we can do, actually, let's go back. We're going to randomize his name, or their name. We don't know what their name would be, or their gender is. So I can hit randomize. What I like to do is roll a d6 here. And I'm going to hit randomize this many times, 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hawkwin. I'm going to roll one more time. Hawkwin is option 1. Option 2. Copy this. Noranus. When it is. Let's like put an extra N in there. Maybe like an apostrophe. Why not, right? So now we have our character sheet. What we can do with this is we can obviously equip these. This is not really a D&D lesson, but this gives us a little bit of an example of what this character is going to be. So there's a half-elf bard whose name didn't end up staying for some reason. It was HOQ apostrophe WYNN. And now this is the character that we're going to make. So we have our background and our description. Actually, one of the things we can do before we continue is to give us a little bit more of a prompt. Is under description, they have suggested characteristics. And so you can use this as another prompt to get you a little bit more into the character. So I like doing this because it gives us a little bit of a sense of more of who the person is. So we need to roll 2d8s. You know, whenever you have a story, it's always easier. So this is a person who works hard so they can play hard. And then option 8 is a job well done, especially if they can convince somebody else to do it. These are all d6s, so I'm going to roll 3 d6s, 1, 2, 3. Option 1 is 5. They're committed to people, to their crewmates, not their ideals. 4, in a harbor sea town, they have a paramour whose eyes nearly stole me from the sea. It's a very Brandy situation. And number 5, I can't help but pocket loose coins and trinkets I come across. So we have our character. We have actually a pretty fun little character there because, you know, let's change the theme to the bard color, which is like this pink. We'll change this background here to something that feels more epic, and we'll close this. So our features and traits in our background. Oh, it didn't keep them. There we go. I know it was this one. This one. Committed to their friends. It's lost. We have a love situation that they probably would come back to at some point. They also like to steal things. So this is kind of a fun character to play with. And let's get started making this character. This is D&D Beyond if you guys use this. This is just for Dungeons and Dragons stuff, obviously. But it's kind of a fun way to generate a prompt like we did last week when we made this character. Not this one, but this one. This was at this point, we're basically creating a party. So this is our half-orc rogue. And so now we need to make a half-elf bard who would be, you know, his companion on this journey, this epic quest they would be going on. So half-elf Hawkwin, I think, was the name we started with. A sailor. I'm trying to decide. I think that sounds... We're going to go in and get one of these head planes, and we're going to start off with that today. That's what I ended up using for the previous one as well. And we're just going to go ahead and get started on that. The stream is capped at 720. Yes, that is not your ISP. Well, the website I used was D&D Beyond. And I just like it because it gives you a character. You know, I could do this 7 times, 6 times, 5 times, whatever. and like create a whole party, right? Make choices that I've already picked that are off limits, and you could do a pretty fun way to do that. Now, this person to me sounds a little mischievous, right? They like to pickpocket things. They sound like a charmer, right? They have somebody in another city who almost took them from the sea. We'll have some songs we'll have to play later. Again, might mute the stream, but Brandy. I feel like this is this person's theme song. I'm just kind of carving in some eyes using this head plane, and what I'm going to do is just kind of start exploring some shapes. Now we do want a half elf, so that means maybe a little bit of some ears if we want to explore the classic tropes there. Head shape, not crazy strong. I get across some of those elven features, which tend to be more delicate features. I'm just using the move brush and just kind of sculpting all this in. Some choices here to see what kind of comes around. Like also part of what I'm doing is just pushing it away a little bit from what we were doing with the base shape. So now we're just going to start exploring a little bit of a face in here. I don't have any reference up. I probably should get some. As I'm sculpting, if you guys have any interest in reference, posting reference, or giving me some insight into who you think fits this character, whether it's maybe sending me some actor reference or sending me some fictional characters that we could use as inspiration, I'm happy to take a look at it. So Matt Cap over here. Maybe it is this one today. All right, so let's just get going. For some reason, this bald head is reminding me of Dragon Age Inquisition and the new Dragon Age trailer. Is anybody excited for that? But today we're using ZBrush today. Today we're sculpting in ZBrush. Let's be a little more aggressive with the strokes. I almost always focus on the skull shape first, even though I might fill that out and it won't have quite that structure later. I find it a little easier to just kind of start that way. And using this head plane, I actually, a lot of people will sculpt in or use spheres for eyeballs. What I prefer to do, at least immediately, is start here. Ram saying we should make a villain. We ended up making a villain a couple weeks ago, actually. So if you kind of take a look at some of the previous streams, what you'll see is we ended up making a couple different versions of villains, but we had made this sort of a warlord who was very Hulk inspired. And then we also ended up making sort of a vampire lich style character. Who, as I remove some of these elements. I think not quite happy with the robe and all that stuff right now, but so this is probably who, maybe this is a big bad or something that they're facing. What touchpad am I using? I am using I'm using a Wacom pad. I'm not using I think it's a Intuos 4 or Intuos 5. Not super new, but just something like that. I use a large size. I don't use a medium size. So this is what we had done previously, kind of creating a villain for this potential world, and then building it out from there. So today we are making, we'll say like this is, we'll put those pants back on just for, reasons, and put this guy here. We had also made this character last time, but this is a half-orc rogue. So I imagine he could either be like the tall person in the group, right? Maybe he's a big buff dude, or I kind of like the idea of him being against cast and being a little shorter. So today we're starting here with this character. So we'll have to decide how tall this person is. Maybe they're tall and thin. Yeah, Orlando Bloom's a good call for his faces. Obviously Legolas inspired, being very elf, and as you said in the chat, Orlando Bloom also doing Will Turner. He has a very elven face for sure. I would agree with that. The intensity up on this, probably double. Where do I work? I work at Gnomon. But in case you've never joined a Gnomon Art Jam before or seen one of these, I'll give you a quick glance at my art station, at some of the previous projects that I've worked on. I worked at Marvel Studios for about 5 years doing a whole range of things, but you'll see kind of over here, right, things from Iron Man, things from Avengers, Age of Ultron, Spider-Man, Star-Lord, Groot, all kinds of different characters there. Also worked at Naughty Dog, worked on projects like Real Steel, and then worked on Star Citizen for about 3 years as an art director and a creative director there. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me. So you can kind of get a sense of what my style is and what kind of projects I've worked on, but mostly in the character department, whether it's character design or creature design or modeling, character modeling as well. All right, so let's get into this a little further. I think somebody had said Orlando Bloom, so I'm going to get a picture of Mr. Bloom up on my other screen. Do you guys know he's married to Katy Perry? I just learned that the other day. It's a little intense for this Orlando Bloom section. All right. So he has these kind of like sleepy eyes. I'm going to try to get those in. He also has very defined eyebrows. And he has these really defined, sort of like lower lids. This is the image that I'm looking at, by the way. On ye old Google search. He actually has a broader face than I remembered. In case you guys are just joining, I'm sculpting a half-elf bard that we created randomly. Lips are very difficult to just block in for me, so I usually just start by drawing like a line like this. And then I have to start chiseling in the features of the face. All right, this is starting to, there's at least features here, right? There's a face that's coming out of this, which is great. I love this top feature here, which is the timeline that you can scroll back in time. So this is where we started with, and as we kind of progress, you'll see the choices that we make, and eventually it's kind of cool because you almost get to see like a face or something start to emerge out of this. Right now, it kind of looks like Abraham Lincoln with that, but that little thing I just put right like here. This is a good question for the chat because we'll get to it at some point. This is a performer, right? A sailor, but a bard, so a storyteller on the sea. Facial features wise, should this person have facial hair as a half elf? On that. If so, what style? And their hairstyle in general, we got to figure out what they're going to be looking like. You're getting a little old. Some of the choices that I've made have made this person seem much older than I intended them to be. But we didn't dictate an age, so they could be older. Kevin from YouTube is asking, you're currently a tech artist in the industry and you're wondering if I had any tips from my experience on skills or traits I would recommend diving deeper into. Yeah, good question. I guess I would, if you don't mind further clarifying the question, what kind of tips or tricks are you looking for? You're a tech artist, so are you wanting to get more into art, or are you wanting to pursue or continue pursuing tech art? Also, I'm assuming, are you in games or are you in film or animation or something different? This is a little sadder than I was hoping they would have turned out right so far. This is one of those challenges where you're like, I think I know what I want, but I'm struggling kind of getting it, you know? What method do I prefer to do in a pose sculpt? I almost always sculpt in an A pose. Vincent Castle. Oh, I should. That name is so familiar. Let me look it up. Or is it Cassell? Oh, yeah, for sure. This guy. Definitely getting in that area. That's not bad reference, though. Let's run with that. He definitely has some elven features. So one of the things we could do there is a half elf, so not 100%, which is something we don't really have to pay attention to. But if we wanted to, sizing up the eyes is always a nice little touch. Even spacing them a little further apart. I think it was Cassell. I think I said that name wrong. Yeah, let's run with this for now. I think these big cheekbones he kind of has. And this sort of like very thin but gaunt jowl. Continue to expanding on that. I think the lips that I made just happen to fit that as well. So we're going to expand on those just a little bit. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this head. Well, we will, but we'll come back to it. We just finished Ocean's 11 the other night, and we were going to watch Ocean's 12, which is perfect. Beard inspiration, your first thought is something Viking-like. Characters from Viking like Ragnar. Mm-hmm. Been watching Raised by Wolves, speaking of Ragnar. I don't know if anybody's checking that show out. So it's a little bit further before we jump into the body. The thing I like about using these head planes is that you can do this very quickly. It really doesn't take all that much time, right? Because the structure is really there, right? I don't recommend this if you're a 100% beginner to do all the time, because it is good to have practice getting into the structure and understanding where that structure comes from and how to build it from scratch. If you're just doing sketches, right, and it's a good tool to use, but it's not something I would use as a crutch. It's nice to break out of that every now and then. Head, let's pull this in. A little too far. Back of the head here is feeling a little weird. You just started sculpting in Blender. That's great. I've never actually played in Blender. I've heard it's a great program. There's obviously a ton of cool stuff coming out about it, or it's being done in it. I haven't done the sculpting in Blender. How do you feel like how do you enjoy it? And going back to Kevin, your question about tech artists, so you said that right now you are in the film on the research and dev side of things, but you want to focus on creating procedural systems and materials for artists to use. You want to transition to games eventually. You like working with nodes in any software, but you're still new to Python. I mean, obviously, if you want to, I don't know if you've explored things like Substance Designer. That's a way to play around with that if you haven't done that before. But I guess one of the things that I would, if you're interested in, it sounds like creating tools, and maybe you're already doing this, but definitely just talking to, if you're not an artist, talking to other artists and figuring out what they would want. Tools are such a valuable part of any production pipeline. Being able to create new tools, new ways, new processes of doing something is such a valuable skill set. Eyebrows make him a little sad. I want to bring some happiness into this person. So we could obviously, do the classic happy. That worked better than I expected it to be honest with you. So we'll run with that for a minute. Creating smiles is not always easy. Sculpting is difficult. I think it's a skill that's definitely acquired. Like you have to acquire it. Um, the main thing, you're not asking for advice, but the thing I would say is focus on big shapes first. Don't go into small details first. Fun to do small details. I get it, and I understand why people do it. But if you want a more successful sculpt, getting into the details will just cause you problems. Even this sculpt, we can get, we're looking at it in a lot of ways. I'll remove the floor. And I'm looking at it intentionally almost at this distance, right? What does it read like at this distance, at a far distance, is really one of the most important parts of sculpting, the thumbnail. Just like thumbnails in 2D, reading from a thumbnail, you can do this with things like this and also what the silhouette reads like. Those are all very important. I can tell you that my silhouette here is a little weak. We'll adjust that as we move forward, though. Would I recommend doing a full body or a head? That's a good question. I think a head is a good starting point. The human face is a very, very, very complex shape. And so I always recommend there's so many elements to the face that are difficult, right? And there's so many different levels of complexity and forms and how things wrap into each other and all this kind of stuff. And I think that if you can sculpt a face, like if you can spend the time to get that to look good, you can sculpt the body. I think that's no problem to ask. I'm gonna pull these eyes apart to make it a little more elven. Now they're starting to look a little creepy when I do that. Don't want it to go into goblin territory, which is sometimes what can happen, especially with these big cheekbones. Start pulling things apart. It looks a little weird. Ears, yep, ears are difficult. Ears are always difficult. Eyes are always difficult. Mouths are difficult. There's, everything is difficult when you're sculpting a head, and I think that's why I'm saying like sculpting a head. If you can sculpt a head, I know you could sculpt a body. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really get more difficult, in my opinion, than the head. You see what I'm doing here? I'm going to say before we get too much further, this character's name was Hawkwyn, I believe. HOQ apostrophe WYNN. And what I like to do is, you see, do some sculpting, and then afterwards, afterwards, I'll move those shapes around. So you don't have to stick with exactly what was there. That's one of the best things about sculpting digitally, is you can adjust the proportions afterwards. So one thing that I've been doing and really enjoying is using the Sculptors Pro features here to kind of push in little bits of the detail. I did this on this other character who's over here. So this is the character we sculpted last week. Using a very similar process, you'll see this is, or you'll see some of the same things as far as like where some of these planes of the heads are. You can kind of tell that it's in the same vein, right? But what is cool about this is that it's so easy, right? But what I was using was the Sculptors Pro features, and you can see where the extra polygons here are. This is where there's additional subdivisions, and so what that means is that when you see, you know, the when you see like these little things, I'm going to try to see if I can gesture. Aha. When you see the little extra stuff here, right, that's where I've sculpted, and I've just only added subdivisions in that local area, right? And it's just specifically to that, and I think that gives it a nice level of definition, but you don't have to spend the time subdividing the whole model. The rest of it looks fine from a distance, and that's okay. So this is a previous one we sculpted, blah, 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 other characters we sculpted. Now we're on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that again. I'm going to turn on Sculptors Pro, which is this little tiny circle yin yang Pepsi symbol. And when I sculpt, what you'll notice is depending on the size of my brush, when I size it down, it'll be more. You get to be able to carve that detail into this sculpt. But I don't have to worry about adding subdivisions, and this only works on a model with 0 subdivisions on it. So this isn't something you can do for every single model, but if you're wanting to come in like I am here, and I'm just going to block this in, add in a level of detail. You know, I want to define these eyes, for example. Maybe I want to come in here and just add a level of subdivision of smoothness. Maybe I don't want it all to be smooth. I'm going to turn down the smooth. I'm just going to actually go over this whole area with a smooth brush, kind of at like this level. Okay. I'm just going to add subdivision there. I could turn this off if I want. This way, if I want to come in, they'll turn this subdivision off now. Sorry, Sculptors Pro off. I can carve this line. I can figure out where these shapes are going to go. But now I can sculpt on these with some of my other more favorite brushes, with doing exactly what I like to do, but just with a little more resolution, only locally in that area. Yes, I set the, I got the details using Sculptors Pro. Dynamesh is enabled, but it's not being used. I haven't Dynameshed. If I Dynamesh now, you'll see that all goes away. Getting into like almost a borderline Willem Dafoe area, which I'm actually quite happy about. John Wick the other day, and I totally spaced that Willem Dafoe is in that movie. Willem Dafoe would make an incredible bard. Let's see. Do I want to use, so yeah, I just use smooth with 0 intensity on with Sculptors Pro, and just adjust the size of the brush, because the size of the brush will dictate, like I'll do it here. I hold down smooth, you see it has 0 intensity. We'll turn this on, and the size of the brush, big will give me big polygons, small will give me small polygons, but it's not actually smoothing the surface. It's just adding, or almost in a way decimating, depending on the size of the brush, the features. Yeah, he's in there, right? Willem Dafoe's definitely in here. I think I cranked my clay buildup brush pretty high. All right, this is probably enough for that. Well, I am going to bring in a little bit more detail here. I'm going to use that same trick in the mouth. See, that's a little too big. maybe at this level, and maybe even in here, just to have some detail there. And then I'm going to end up doing the same thing on the eyeballs to sculpt in just a little bit more. So I'm going to just kind of put a little bit of meat around this area, maybe define these lips. Lost a little bit of some of the planar elements of the area around the eyes that I'm not in love with, so we'll probably adjust that at some point. Little J.K. Simmons. See, all these characters I think would make an incredible bard. So I think we're hitting. Can you imagine J.K. Simmons as a bard? Oh, that would be. Actually, I can. Yes. As always, just to get it out of the way, of course. But we're on the Gnomon channel. Welcome to Gnomon Art Jam. We're an hour-ish into our stream. If you guys have any questions, by the way, about anything Gnomon related, Gnomon programs, Gnomon alumni, Gnomon classes, I'm a Gnomon graduate myself. So if you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And we also can connect you with any of our admissions advisors if you're interested in taking a class or learning about our programs. We are available for that as well. All right, so now I'm going to turn this back on. I'm going to do what I've done before, which is try to I'm going to mask this, socket off. Use the clay brush, hold down Alt, and that's a real big iris what I just did. But what I'm going to do is basically sculpt in like this, and it's going to create an iris for us, or the illusion of one. Looking very up. Some creepiness from the front, but I think it's definitely working. So now I can also remove this mask, keep the eyeball itself masked. What I can do with this, I hide the mask, and then I can bring in areas around the eyeball to make it feel like there's a much better overlap. Not my tempo. I am using ZBrush. Why am I using ZBrush instead of Blender? ZBrush is the #1 sculpting package for sure in the industry. So it's definitely the most well and widely used professional sculpting program. Am I trying to emulate a look of clay? No, not entirely. I just don't. What I don't like to have. I do use the clay buildup brush, which obviously has clay in the name. But what I don't like. Well, how do I say this? What I do like about the clay buildup brush, I have this on, is that it gives a little bit of texture. And whenever there's something CG, something 3D, that perfect specular reflection is something that will immediately make it feel fake. right away. So like if we come in here, I'm going to save this and as the one again. If I come in here with any of these areas, like back here, this is just so perfectly CG that nothing, it's hard to make a real thing like this. And so, but if I just come across it with the very subtly or knock down these edges, right, that texture, I'm not trying to emulate clay texture. It's effective in what I'm doing right now, but that texture automatically breaks up the surface and makes it feel more natural. And from here, I can come in and I can, I can build upon that. The human body, especially is not perfectly round, right? It's going to have all kinds of small imperfections on it. And capturing that to a certain degree is going to be good. So, I know for myself, especially when I was a beginning artist, getting into sculpting and getting into 3D, I was always smoothing to a point where I was actually limiting myself as far as what I could sculpt, because I would sculpt, right? Like say I'm doing what I'm right now, I would sculpt and then I would smooth it. I'm trying to smooth up so it actually does something. Would sculpt and then I would smooth it, and then I would sculpt and then I would smooth it, and I would sculpt it and I would smooth it until I wanted like every form to be perfect and the whole surface needed to be perfect. And I was really not making much progress until I was able to force myself to be a little looser. And the way I did that was actually I had a teacher who just basically was like, who called me out on that at Gnomon, and was like, your work is good, but like you're not loose enough. You're not getting into it's easy to tell that you're not getting into the sculpts. And so what you should do is, as a challenge for yourself, is to sculpt without ever using smooth. Never use smooth on a sculpt. So use only the clay buildup brush, or only use the clay brush. And if you want it to be smoother, like let's say I want this area here to be smoother, just sculpt it smoother. Don't use the smooth brush, but understand how the other tools work to a better degree. Like I can come in here if I want and sculpt something to feel like it's smoother. I don't have to use the smooth brush to do that. And it gave me a better understanding of the tools, which is a really important thing. And it also forced me to be more confident in my strokes. You see things, especially with pen and ink artists, the confidence that a pen and ink artist like Kim Jung-ji or Peter Han, or a bunch of these artists who are really, really talented in with pen. There's so many, but just the ability to just put down a stroke and move on, right, is a really impressive feat. And to come into a sculpt like this and just noodle at it really subtly, you can do that and you can build up. But sometimes just coming in and saying, all right, here's a large gesture. I'm not going to undo that. How can I build from that? Is a good way to practice, right? A lot of artists practice. I think that last little bit I'm doing is making him a little older than I want, but I don't mind him being a little older. An older sailor, a Sir Davos, played by Willem Dafoe. Ooh, what if we imagine what Game of Thrones would have been if Sir Davos was Willem Dafoe? I'm gonna be real with you, I could see that. All right, so now we're gonna bring in our base mesh for our body. So we're going to import. Well, first, I'm just going to append an object. You can use the star, or you can use any of these other things, but we're going to overwrite whatever this mesh is. So I'm going to click the star. I'm going to hit import, and I'm going to load in my asset that I use, which is this spaceman with shoes. I want to check. All right, they're different sizes, I think. If I copy this, I think I remember making this one smaller to fit that. I was going to think about putting them in the same scene at some point, but we will do that later. So we'll bring this in, take it down. We will begin to scale it. Now you notice if I don't make it at the very beginning, the scale doesn't always work. So you can actually use deformation over here and use the size slider. Size, there it is. So if you're concerned about pushing it off the axis, this is a way to make that work. What is my favorite brush? That's a great question. My favorite brush is the clay buildup brush. It's my go-to brush. I kind of use it almost exclusively for huge portions of sculpting. And oddly enough, my second favorite brush recently has been the snake hook brush. I remember the snake hook brush jokingly being referred to as like the horns brush for a really long time. And that's not inaccurate at all. But I find it really useful now to be a tool that I use to make big adjustments. Sort of what I was talking about earlier with the making an adjustment and just being more confident, right? That's what I like the snake hook about. Is it's something you can make a bold move, a bold adjustment, and not have to worry about it. Just a very powerful brush. All right, so now what I've got is obviously I have this. I took this head section and I grouped it so that I can add this body to it pretty easily. Now this doesn't really fit the character, in my opinion. We do know that we had rolled up random stats, so we know that what this character's physical makeup roughly should represent. This character's slow. Slightly stronger than the average person, right? So we'll keep somewhat humanoid proportions. I do want to lengthen these legs here a little bit, and at this point I always like to try to get into some sort of a pose. Doesn't need to be perfect, right? But if we even bring in our other character we did, we'll put him over to the side. A little pose will go a long way in getting your character, and not just like presenting the character. I'm not saying in that way. I'm saying it'll get you quite a ways in sculpting the character, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to know who they are, right? That's part of what the whole point of this prompt is. It's not to know what race or like items we're going to put on this character, what their outfit's going to look like. That's not really what the point of the prompt is about. The prompt is, it's an element of it, obviously, but the prompt is more about finding who the character is. And so being able to pose the character is a really important step for me. The thing I sometimes do, at this point in my base mesh, and you can do this with any of your base meshes, is I always want an extra edge here, an extra level of division. So I'll go into my Z modeler brush and I'll insert a single edge loop, and I'll usually just do it like here. Sometimes I'll put one here as well, or here. But I can do this across anything at this subdivision level, and I like to do this early because I can add these little extra bits of subdivision that this specific base mesh doesn't really give me the option for. going to turn off dynamic on my brush. That limits the size of the brush. It does other things as well, but the thing I didn't like was it was limiting the size, so I'm changing that. I don't want to put this person in a pose where it's almost like, you know, like they're kind of like presenting and having a speech, maybe. I don't want to do a full-on pose, but like you saw with this character, those get you a long way, and I'm trying to do something that's symmetrical-ish. So I'm wondering if, you know, doing something where they're almost like maybe a little Christ-like, but, you know, something that's what pose could we do that would work? That wouldn't be a massive adjustment, right? Is there an online Gnomon course that would take someone from a beginner, immediate Houdini user like myself and get them over the hump to a confident skill level? We have 4 levels of Houdini classes, and they're all available online, upcoming for this term. So I would check out our classes, and you can get in touch with admissions if you want to check that one out, or sorry, I'm thinking about multiple things. Check out admissions, or you can check out our course library right now, which is online as well. Hands on hip. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Like sort of like almost like yeah. Hands on hip is good. So let's get that going. And I like to do this as you saw in the previous ones. I'll load up version 1 of the character that we were working on last time. This is version 1 of this character, and then this is the next iteration. So you see I took this base mesh, which is basically the exact phase that we're at here, posed it, and then we started sculpting it up, because this is an important step of realizing who the character is. So one of my big things that I like to do is to try to get the character across as early as possible. I did not make the body in Maya. This character, this body that I'm using, is actually from a older modeling program called Silo, which was used quite a long time ago. So if you use Silo, perhaps, I guess, but it's pretty old. It's not the start of how we're going to go, but we'll get there with this. It reminds me of like a Peter Pan. Adjust these hands, obviously. Of course, now that I load all these objects, the autosave is going to take much longer. And you'll see me in the little window doing this. I did this last time where I was doing this all the time. But I'm going to kind of imagine myself as this character. What I'm doing is I'm standing, attempting to do the pose, and then I'm actually just thinking of what I look like. I either will look at myself in the camera, or I'll think about like what the angle of my position is, and I'll look at that and say, like, you know, how are these arms working? They're actually coming quite a bit forward, right? Like this. And my shoulders, I want them to kind of be down, maybe not forward or rolled, but, you know, I kind of want them to just be a little back. So maybe I'll make a subtle adjustment for that, and then we'll continue. And right now the head is obviously its own sort of part of this. Like up and back, not down and back. So if I add subdivision levels to this, it's going to go real smooth. And it's going to immediately obliterate anything that I had in there, right? It's like immediately. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little more sculpting. And before I continue, I'm going to save, as we should, as we always should be. This is the way, and we will transpose master. So right now there's no subdivision levels on this. Ooh, we've made an alien. And there's no subdivision levels on this. So it's not going to Normally when you do transpose master, it's going to push you down to the lowest subdivision level. We don't have that, so we're just going to hit this, and it's going to bring the whole thing across. And what I like to do with this is they are separate subtools, but we're going to be able to sculpt on them all at the same time. And what I can do is not just sculpt on them, but I can also use my move tools. So I can use the whole character, even though I'm warping that head crazily, right? I can adjust overall proportions. If I wanted to do, big head mode, we can do big head mode. If we want to do something different, we can do that. And it's kind of a fun way to do that, but it's also a really good way to adjust overall position. So when I'm wanting to, bring the chest forward, like we're talking almost hands on hip Peter Pan, that means that the head itself needs to move back. So we're talking overall pose and positioning at this point, right? So head, back, chest, and chest forward, which means the hips, example, are going to be forward. And that's part of why those arms are moving forward at the bottom that I was noticing. Now we do have arms out on this character and legs out on this character. I think that's going to be fine for this character as well. What I'm going to do is just use the drag rectangle, or not drag rectangle, the transpose, and hold down control, drag this around. I gotta be careful sometimes because the center line will get absolutely destroyed when you do this, these kind of rotations. Or if you cross the middle and then cross back, there's no undoing that. So you have to be careful, especially if you're trying to do something very tight like this. We're not going to do that. We'll probably do something that's, again, very Peter Pan-esque. I think we almost... Did we do this on the last character? Did we put his head up? We did. I don't want them all to be like sticking their heads up. So I think this person might like have a little cock to their head or something when we're all done. Kind of like the idea of him being this more broad-shouldered person too. You can block out proportions in this point. There's no reason you can't. This is a really good tool for posing. It's a really great tool for proportional adjustments, being able to mask something and really just start blocking in, what it's going to be. These hands are going to be a really big element to this pose. I don't want to spend hours and hours on posing these hands for this. So I'm going to try to do the best I can as quick as I can. It will... I'm doing it to myself right now. It will make it look better. It will definitely sell the character. So it's something we'll want to keep in mind. This ribcage is ridiculously small, though. Now we're going to block out some anatomy, and what we're going to do is we're going to separate this. Be careful that I don't cross the middle, because if I do, those fingers will never come apart. There's ways to do it, but I don't want to deal with the hassle. This is kind of where we're at right now. This is getting there. A lot to do, don't get me wrong, but we're getting there with the pose. And so I'm going to hit T-pose mesh, and we'll have this. As you'll see that if I undo, I can undo that whole move, but you'll be able to see pretty quickly here. This is before, and this is even with this ridiculous little head. The pose is a significant element of who this character is, from being almost like C-3PO, like, oh goodness, to this, like, all right, we're starting to understand who this character is a big element. So now that we've got this, we've got the head in the right direction, we've got the pose in the right direction. What do? We save, like we always do. And then we are going to start sculpting some anatomy. Now, if you've seen the stream before, I use this trick almost every single time. But to get a little bigger so you can kind of see it, what I do is I go into my geometry, and rather than just hitting subdivide, which turns this person into a smooth tube, I like a lot of the angles that I've created, and I spent time using them to dictate the shapes, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to noodle on this for 5 seconds before I can continue. I'm going to turn off smoothing, just right here. What this does is when I divide, it adds the subdivisions. You'll see that they're there, but it doesn't actually smooth the surface. Then I can turn it on and I can smooth it. Now, if I want it at that point, we can continue. Sometimes I'll do it twice. But I got this really kind of blocky person, but it's definitely there, right? It's definitely to the point where we can start sculpting on it. And it's also not too much geometry with the mesh that I'm using to where it's going to be impossible to sculpt on. And I can still go down too, right? So it's a nice way to have for me, it's very similar to basically saying what we did in the head planes, right? Like with this character here, we're going to go back here. It feels a lot like this, creating structure of the body, but it's giving me enough, just like this was, it's giving me enough geometry that I can sculpt on it, and it makes it easier for me to create build forms on top of it, just like you can kind of see like I was doing here. I'm using the structure that's built into the Asaro head, or the equivalent of an Asaro head, and I'm building on that, and that's what we're doing with this base mesh. So that's my thoughts as far as why I like to work this way. You don't have to sculpt this way if you like to sculpt a different way, or you want to bring Dynamesh to 1,000 or several thousand and just kind of work that way. That's totally fine. I know sculptors who do it every which way, and it's all really what works for you. So that's kind of one of my favorite things about art, is it's just however you can do it, right? However you feel comfortable doing it is going to be what's great for you. So what I like about this character already is sort of, if we actually pull open his character sheet, right? I'll show this so that the screen is a little larger. Random character that we rolled. He has a strength of 14, which is pretty good. So he's going to be a bard who's going to be swinging with strength. Less nimble. Not crazy charismatic, but he's pretty good at everything else, right? And what this means to me, and also knowing that he's a sailor, he's a little selfish, right? This is kind of like somebody who feels like they're going to boast. Like he might be able to talk a big game about everything, but he might not be able to pull it all off. So I feel pretty good about that. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get across with this character, is maybe a little bit of a sense of cockiness. I'm going to start sculpting some of this anatomy in, and just like the Asaro head, I'm going to use all these forms here that are here to do this. We still have all these polygroups, so if I want to hide the hips for a while, and maybe we'll just focus on the body for a bit. And we're just going to focus on large primary forms and muscle groups, breaking down this shape into smaller shapes. Do try to sculpt the back at the same time. I don't always get to it. As you'll see, like here, like that's the first one. It's kind of done, right? But it's enough that if you spin the model around, it doesn't look bad. Have like a lean strength. We're not going to spend a ton of time sculpting all this anatomy. It's more to block out the character so that we can get the clothing on top. It does help, to have a strong base underneath. But if you're not going to see it, you don't have to sculpt it. I'm going to grow. What is happening? I'm going to grow this selection and end up deleting this headpiece because I just don't really need it. It's just going to save us some polygons for when we get to that point. Eventually I'll delete it. I'm not going to do it right now. So as you can tell, I'm only at 4 subdivisions. This is only, even with that little head, which is here, it's only 60,000 polygons. We're not trying to push the limits of our computer here. We're not trying to go crazy. Get rid of some of these arms. Sort of a clearer view. Butt out of the way. Always kind of a funny one to sculpt. Everybody kind of giggles. It's an important part, especially to poses like this. Hands are really not in the right spot, so we'll have to adjust that in a minute. Rib cage is, this torso is feeling very long. So I'm starting to stretch this out. Again, this is just blocking in this stuff. He's likely, he is a bard, maybe his shirt will come off, who knows. Legs, we're probably not going to see a lot of legs, but it's always nice to just get this stuff done. I'm doing similar stuff if you saw what I was doing on the head. This is basically knocking back some of these planes and or emphasizing parts of the planes, and that's the way that I like to use any of these base meshes, is try to build on what the successes of them is. You don't have to resculpt every piece of everything you're doing if you're using a base mesh. Legs there. Some weirdness in this shin. This will give us some volume that's going to feel a little bit more natural when we start adjusting and putting things on. think generally the hips feel too thin, so. Like I said, we are going to have to adjust those arms here in a minute, though. I think we are getting to a point where this is starting to feel like a person with a little bit more personality in them than just be in a T pose, right? As compared to, something like this, where you're just starting with a block and it's T pose, A pose, right? Those are fine and they're really good for production, and then they're usually required for production, right? I think it's a pretty common thing to say that that's how you have to sculpt in a production. But if you can, I always prefer to sculpt in something that lets you explore the character. I cranked up my intensity on my damn standard brush. I'm going to start using it as a sketching tool. So I'm going to go a little over the top with some of these lines, but that's intentional because I want to know, how some of this is flowing. Some of that Willem Dafoe, J.K. Simmons is still here for sure. So we're going to position these hands. One thing you can do, sometimes when you're working on a pose like this that is symmetrical, it can be difficult because if you're using symmetry, you can't actually grab. Like I want to grab this whole hand and just move it, but it's really difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide one. So hide, turn off symmetry, hide one. And then when I show everything, you can choose whatever side's easier for you. I tend to choose the character's left side, so I actually chose the wrong one. It's up there, and that's so that when I'm sculpting, I actually have my hand. I realize you can't see me. I have my hand and I put it on my hip, and so I'm looking and using my left hand as reference, which is why I usually sculpt the left hands of my character solo. Now I can come in here and, well, first of all, what I could do, I guess, is I could also just show them and go polygroups, auto groups, and that's going to separate any two meshes that are not the same, like connected. And so now I can hide them, and I can also do it that way to just a little simpler, a little easier to make it something I can do in the future. So I'm looking and I'm saying, oh, my hand is actually really pushed. Make sure everything else is masked so I don't rip something apart. Pretty cranked. You guys are going to see me doing this a bunch right now. I'm kind of looking down at myself and just trying to understand exactly what the relationships of all this is. Where those hands are. Where the, just trying to really understand the pose. I think it can take some time. Like really good animators are really good at posing. There's some people that are good at posing, not in animation, but in sculpting too. Some people are great at posing. Some people are not good at posing. I am a mediocre poser. So I need to spend a lot of time looking at myself, trying to understand what's going on in the pose. That's how I make it work. Not caring about this side at all right now. Thank you. Masking, hiding. I only want this thumb. mask. Like inside the body right now. It's not really what I want. We're just gonna have to break it. Maybe not that bad, but it's definitely what's gonna have to happen. Either spend a bunch of time trying to mask this thing, or effects always help. All right, let's get this thing out a little further, maybe. I know it seems like I'm spending like maybe a lot of time on these hands and all that, but this is really where the essence of the character is coming through. And I've always found, even since I was beginning sculpting, that if I put something in a pose, even sculpting something from a sphere and trying to do something in a pose, it's just so much easier. It's just so much easier because you're actually thinking about it as a character. It's an actual character with a personality, who's got a life, right? Problems, flaws, and it just makes it so much easier. Not afraid to use the move brush here. I've seen some people ask me and be concerned about using, can I only rotate a mesh posing? Because that's maintaining volume or maintaining size. You can absolutely squash and stretch and break this thing until it's doing what you need it to do. Like, these hands are actually like, how does that work? Because this thumb should be like back here. Like, what I'm wanting to do is I want to do this. Right? Because it's not just horizontal, it's actually this direction. So what if we just try that? What will happen? You'll find that if you're working on a pose like this, there's certain moments where it just like clicks and you're like, oh, I got it. Or it's like you're fighting it forever and hours and hours and hours. Feels like the whole hand needs to go out. That's why I'm running into that thumb problem. Which means we need to move the arm. Which means we can bend this. Also this way. Bend the hand. Maybe do its thing. That'll probably work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus a little bit on this hand really quick. I'm going to hide this other one and just try to add a little bit of definition to it. So what I like to do is go up to the highest level that I have, which right now is 4, which is not crazy high in this subdivision, and just start trying to block out some of the anatomy that this would be covering. What I typically do with these hands is at their lowest subdivision level, they're just cubes, right? But fortunately, it's almost like there's one digit or one span for each of these, and so I kind of just go across them all, highlight them. So that's the knuckle. treat it like little robot hands. One of my ZBrush teachers from Gnomon, actually, Maddie Spencer, taught me that. She's still teaching at Gnomon. You can take her class online. It's an awesome class. But she told me to think about hands as if they're little robot digits. And so thinking about that helped me significantly, because you just really pay attention to where the knuckles are, right? Where the knuckles are, where the key pieces of movement are. Welcome to the stream for anybody who hasn't seen what we've been working on. I'll jump back to the main thing here in just a little bit. We are working on a randomly generated character using a D&D random creation method, and we are making a half-elf bard today. The sailor. Focusing on those knuckles first, and kind of building up from there, and then taking each one of those little bits and typically knocking back these elements on this mesh. You can pull out some of these, making them a little more skeletal to begin with is a little easier. You can always add fat, but adding structure, adding skeletal element can be a little harder. So maybe come in and thicken some of these knuckle bits up. And knocking off these edges. Get it to be a kind of a quickly rounded thing. Now, obviously, that's super skeletal, and that's fine. You can always adjust things if needed. The part of the reason that the skeletal approach helps so much, and the little robot hand approach helps so much, is that it's purely based on structure. You're understanding what the skeleton is. You're understanding what the everything is, and so even yes, it looks more skeletal than I would want it to be. Keep saying that word. You can tell the structure of the hand looks significantly better than that one. So what we'll do is we'll mask off what we want to keep. We adjust some more of this pose just a little bit. Get that hand itself seated against the hip. And then maybe the arm here in a second. Mask what we want to keep. Maybe go a little higher. And then I'm going to use Smart Resim. As always, I'm going to save. We're getting to a point where we should start saving some new iterations. So deformation, Smart Resim. Anything that was masked is kept. So since this is a mirrored mesh, it'll mirror everything that's masked. The random creation method, for anybody who came in late, we were using D&D Beyond to explore a character, and so we ended up making a character here. This off, and this is kind of where we're at with this half-elf bard. A little skeletal, a little too skeletal, and those hands look a little strange, but we'll get there. But this is the character we're making. This is not their name. Their name we had randomized was Hawkwin. I'm saving it there, but it's not wanting to save it somewhere else. There we go. So this is who we are, I guess, would be playing as. And what we did was we rolled dice from left to right: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Whatever the number was stayed in that area. We randomly rolled for our class. We randomly rolled for our race. We randomly rolled for our background, and as well as our feats. And our feats are personality traits. So this is a sailor, half-elf bard, who likes to work hard and play hard, likes to convince somebody else to do work for them. Had a paramour who nearly stole him from the sea, and can't help pocket loose coins and things he sees. So a little cocky, I think, and sort of like a little charismatic sailor. We're gonna get this one and this one. We're gonna put them back together in the groups. Even though I think I said earlier we'll have to play some Brandy at some point because I think that's this guy's theme song. A little too thin there. Get a little thickness in here. Maybe even some of this. These arms are looking potentially a little odd and short, so there's something going on here that I'm not super happy with right now. I want to get more into costume work. I'm just starting to understand a little bit of who this character is next. First, I think I want to do hair, though. We talked about hair. One of the things we can do with this hairstyle, or explore what this hairstyle is, there's a little ridiculous head that is inside. We can actually use to explore some hairstyles. I'm going to save. Go here. And just one more time, I think I'm going to adjust this pose just slightly. You're going to see me keep doing this, but sort of, I think this guy would imagine himself as a superhero. Can Gnomon be an online Gnomon course be feasibly accomplished in parallel with a full-time job? If you're taking just a single course, yes. We don't recommend for any of our full-time programs to have a job while you take them. It's just too much work. A lot of work that needs to go into these hands right now to make this look good. I'm just going to try to get it as passable as fast as I can because we're just over halfway in. But I think with all things considered, so far we've got this character in our party. I'm going to lengthen those legs up again. We've got this one. We'll use this as a rough size. And then we've got this guy as well. So it's two of our party members. I feel like this is like their size relationship right here. And then we have one of our villains. We have this zombie villain. Gotta lose these pants. We can lose this for now. We'll just color it red. Deep dark red. There. So this is like a large zombie person who's seemingly wearing dress socks. Call these feet. Okay. This one should be pretty big. I think that this character, talking to this, I think we're looking like this height. And then I think we're working on this one. think this is probably like the relationship of those characters. And this is important because you want to start getting like adding things like you start adding things like costume elements, equipment, things that start showing scale. Having an idea of what this is going to look like is important. And also at this point, you can start creating costume elements that are unique. And when you start thinking about a cast of characters, how they play together, short, tall, big silhouettes, slim silhouettes, square silhouettes, etc. All that kind of stuff is going to play into that. So now I want to get into a little bit of clothing. I think we should give this guy gloves. Let's try to cover those hands up. So first we're going to start making elements, and let's make gloves the first thing. So I'm going to use extract, which is a pretty easy tool. Mask what you want, hit extract. He's not wearing like welder's gloves, so we're going to change this thickness here to like 0.05 and hit extract, which is even seemingly worse, 0.005. That's not too bad. Yeah, we'll just accept that. We'll mask these. One element roughly down. Let's make these like, put the color on. There we go. These colors. Let's continue. All right, we can explore some hair. So I can sculpt this mesh, and one of the things I like doing about this is I can sculpt it through. So we can, this is where if you're playing whatever character, this is the, where we can explore horn shapes, or we could explore hairstyles, or we could explore hats, or we could explore things like that. Now, as I say hat, I don't think there's anything more sailory than a tri-corner hat. To be honest, I haven't looked at a tri-corner hat in quite a long time. Oh, it's got a fold. See, it's got to have these folds. That's how I knew I was missing something. It's inverted. What I'm doing, like, this doesn't look right. This looks like a jester's hat. So that's because we need to do this. This is, again, why I like using the prompt, the random prompt. Is, yeah, I'm going to play on some tropes because it's kind of fun, right? But I would have never attempted to sculpt a tri-corner hat just because I thought that was fun, or it could have come up with it out of nowhere. It seems to fit potentially the character. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to separate this green poly group, which is here, as you can see. I'm going to grow one more here. Remove that from that one. Polygroup this. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to save as always. Whenever I do a split operation or a deletion operation, I always save right before. Split hidden, cool. So now that hat is a separate element. I'm going up some subdivision levels. I'm going to just make some minor, very, very minor sculpts because it's adding to the undo. Because you can undo that. I don't want to really undo that. And here, now I have my fledgling hat as the beginning portion of this. And at this point, we can also scale it. A little big. A little big. Also, all inside his face, so that's something we need to be aware of. Hello, and welcome to the stream. We are sculpting a tri-corner hat. Why is it not in T-pose? That's a great question. We're sculpting. What I'm wanting to do today is try to get a little bit more character across with the sculpt, and I always find that sculpting something in a pose is going to help you get there a lot faster. Often you'll see even bigger companies, bigger projects in the visual development departments, places like Disney, places like Marvel, will sculpt their characters in a pose to be able to show and to be able to get approvals on what the character looks like. Getting a character approved can be a difficult challenge when they're in T-pose, right? They're just kind of sitting there the whole time. And what can happen is T-pose is just difficult for a director or somebody who's not a 3D artist to say, yeah, that looks good. I know that's going to look good when it's moving. I know that's intending. That's going to be the end result of what I'm hoping this should look like, right? That's very difficult, and it's a lot to ask of somebody who's maybe not comfortable making that decision. So putting that character in pose is a good way to do that. And then often what you'll see in those departments is they'll sculpt them in pose, and then they'll have to unpose them. Just basically take what I would be doing here and breaking that apart. A little longer than I expected to sculpt this hat. So fill this object. Would want to spend quite a bit more time on this, and it's kind of definitely something that's going to be playing into the overall silhouette of the character, right? So when we turn this off, apparently I also filled them with materials, which is not intended. I think with material, it did not. Aha, look. I feel like this bard would have long hair. That's fine. All right, let's get some hair in here. Actually, let's get some shirts in here. Let's play around with some cloth. No, lied. We're doing here. Okay, so we're going to duplicate this head. We have another one. I'm going to add a color to this. We'll say brown. I'm going to smooth the whole thing, or just go into deformation, inflate. I'm going to type like a -5. It's going to push the whole thing inside. And it's actually going to make it, you'll see if I go back and forth, just slightly smaller. And that means that when I'm here on this mesh, showing everything, what I can do is do something similar that I do with the hat, which is I can use any of these things, oh God, to just sculpt through it. This is going to get a little dirty. Be good for this. Kind of like a little rag almost. What I was expecting here, but there's sort of like this, you know, covering my neck kind of a vibe, which I'm kind of digging. Stretching this. The extra like little faceting in the polygons can actually make it feel more like hair sometimes, because you can almost see like the strands. I'm not going to go crazy. Oh, the accident gave him a little soul patch, which I feel, to be honest, pretty good about. I'm going to be pulling in this brown in here. Like maybe we'll just paint that a little bit, like a more brighter orange or yellower. That's not what I thought. Yep. Nope. Brown it is. Let's get one of these. I'm going to mask this off. I'm going to pull this forward. We might not use all this, but I'm basically grabbing clay, right? Right? This is going to be like parts of his front hair that we could, the mask, turn off symmetry, and we could, do this. Like, do we want some elements? We're going to kind of swoop down. I'm treating it very sculptural. You get a lot of questions about like hair. What's the best way to do hair? You could do fiber mesh. You could do all kinds of things, right? What I'm caring about right now is really just the sculptural, graphical quality to it. Even though I'm stretching these polygons into a place that looks, if you actually look at the mesh itself, it's not going to be great. That's not really what I'm looking for. But it does can give us this kind of nice quality.
In Greek, nostalgia literally means pain from an old wound. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again.
he were to take his hat off, you know, we got to do this. So you got this up there. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Hat back up. And let's save. I don't want to load. Save. All right. So now we've got our bard, half-elf bard sailor. He's looking like he needs some clothes. Looking like some clothes are needed. So we need to figure out what he's got. Now we know, I think what would be an interesting idea, first off, we'll get to that in a minute. We got about an hour left. We're going to explore some of the clothing things. And what I've been using, which has been decently successful, is using extracts or using Dynamesh objects. So we're going to take his shirt. The short sleeve. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can do this all kinds of ways. The quick way I like to do is just extract it, hit accept. Is what that is. I'm going to take all this stuff and I'm going to delete this though. Everything that's on the inside, even these little rings. This is gone. That's fine. All right, so that is all going to be geometry, modify topology, and delete hidden. All right, so we got this. This would probably be like a what? Like a whitish cream. But he's a bard. Would a bard wear cream? I don't know. You know, maybe he's like channeling a little Scanlan. Maybe blues is power color. I'm going to Dynamesh this whole thing though. Go a little lower, probably in 64-ish. I found that this is working better for me than the, when I start getting to the dynamics, than the thinner meshes. We'll play with that in a minute too. So we got this shirt template. You guys know I'm a big fan of coats, so we're going to have to go back to this body. We're going to have to expand what we got here. This, that'll be fine. I don't want anything in the middle. Just want a little bit more real estate. I'm just going to go to the bottom of the butt here just so we can get a little more polys. Nope, I lied. We're not. We're going to start here. We're going to extract that. Same kind of thing. Now this is a different color right now. So that's actually what we should be getting. I don't think I ever thought that was blue. Yeah, that's what it is. That color. Fill object. Switch to another color. Go back here. Extract. There we go. Accept. Ooh, I got that weird little thing. That's fine. We'll deal with that. What I'm going to do is while this is done, hide all these arm bits. mask it, stretch it out. Blocking out these shapes, and then in a minute we'll play with some of the dynamics of this, which I think will be pretty fun. Know that this got to be a little bigger than that. Right, it's got to sit on top. Push this out just a tad. I have to go over these. Well, I mean, the gloves could go over the sleeve, right? We could do big pirate's gloves, Captain America style gloves, or we could do this style of coat. We'll hang on to that for a minute. Try not to like obliterate what's here, but we're at a good starting point for that. And then we're going to do just some very quick pants and boots. So boots can actually stay these. I found that it'll be a little easier, but for the pants, I just kind of go like this. Use that, extract, done, accept, boom. It's gray. A little too dark of a gray. Now, we haven't jumped back to our other characters yet, meaning we do have this villain that we've been working on, right? And we also have this companion. We said it would be like the short, be one of the shorter members of the team. And we have this guy now, who'd probably be about this big. So colors, we might want to play into this. Like maybe we want to start playing around with like what colors, how they're going to play against each other, reds, blues, warms, colds, tall, thins, all that kind of stuff is stuff that we might want to play into this, right? So yeah, just something to keep in mind. As I'm working, if anybody has questions, again, as always, please feel free to ask. I haven't heard too many questions recently, so if you've got them stocked up, feel free to ask them. If you've never joined before, if you're just joining, we're sculpting a half-elf bard that we randomly created. He's a sailor. He's a little cocky and he likes to steal things, so I think we're going to have to put some pockets on here. One thing that I think we should definitely add is his shawm, which is his go-to item, which is like a little flute. Maybe we'll do like a little thing like a little satchel that carries his flute or something. How big is a shawm? This is a shawm. Oh, is that how big it is? Okay, it's pretty big. It's pretty big. I thought it was like this long. It is not. So we'll have to figure out a place where that could go. Maybe he's got like a little satchel, like a little side thing that holds it. Let's get into some dynamics. So what we want to do is we're going to hit our dynamics tab here. Now, if you do this, you can hit this collision volume, and that'll calculate everything that's in the scene. If I hit run simulation right now, it's going to inflate it all. It's going to try to basically do the simulation itself. Just kind of interesting. Don't know why. I'm actually interested in. Maybe I didn't have the arms visible. Oh, because there's no body underneath there. No body. If there was a body, we recalculate that, and then we hit this again, and you'll probably see something a little different where it's actually going to go along his arms. You can play along with the self collision. This is where it's obviously going to collide with itself. The inflation is how much it inflates at the beginning versus how much it just starts to fall. And what we could do is we could start here, for example. Very simple, quick calculation. We can run with that if we want to be more of, it's kind of like a chill coat, right? Or if we want to be more of a tight coat, we can always adjust that. You can go inside out or outside in. My preference is to usually go inside out. So we're going to hide things like this. We'll just get a quick pants, right? Just real fast. You don't need to go crazy on this one. I actually like to turn self collision up. But you see that this can sometimes create this effect. Whereas turning that off, do that. You can also mask. So if I mask the top, whole top area here, I run this calculation, it'll just stretch the bottom. Yeah, an arrow quiver. That's kind of what I was thinking. So that'll kind of stretch that. Maybe I'll just remask again very quickly at the top. Run again so there's a little more length in these pants. They kind of bunch at the bottom, which is actually exactly what I'm looking for. And now I can use, you can also use the brushes. So if you hit BC, you'll see a lot of these cloth brushes up here. I like this cloth move brush because it actually has the folds and it will adjust folds as we go. You can also use the cloth pull, which I'm a big fan of, which doesn't actually stretch it, but you can kind of get these bunches in here like this. So I'm going to use both of those. The cloth move first, just to kind of pull some of this stuff off the boot. Still using the boot that I have here. Right, I should probably smooth that a little bit. That, and then I'll use the cloth pull brush. Just I'd like to use it to almost as a little wrinkling. Yeah, a lot of questions about Marvelous. Goodbye, Marvelous. Is Marvelous going to be around? I think Marvelous still has its place. It's just a very different, type of a workflow. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm optimistic about Marvelous's place. Shirt now, so we can do the kind of same thing. But not saying that it. I think it needs to work up its intuitiveness. Right, so we have this, run sim. You see it does the same thing. It kind of gets really gooey. Now that is very piratey though, I will say. This is very piratey to be more like a blouse, be looser. So I'm kind of okay with it doing that. Wondering, what if we do this? Does this do anything? No. You think you can change set the direction? Top of ZBrush to the bottom. So if we go like this, we can set the direction, and then if we run the simulation, it will fall off him. So we want it to be super skin tight, we could go that way. Good to know. Set direction. Self collision, we can always crank that up a little bit. Let's see what happens. kind of like how it's like going off his shoulders a little bit. So we can always come back in. Okay, this is interesting. Pull things around. Really like the cloth, like the looseness of the cloth that's going on here. I want to try to create a difference between this character, if they're supposed to be castmates at some point, crewmates if they're on the sea. Oh, between the types of clothing that they wear. Whereas this character, I want to kind of have this round, compact, tight clothing. This would be one of the characters, and this is the color, which is a little dark, so I'm going to keep that off. But this is one, and then this is the other one, which you could also turn off the color on, so you can kind of get a better sense of if they're hanging out together. You can really see them differently. Yes, you absolutely can use cloth brushes on a creature's skin. I actually have that here. This is what I ended up using this for. So a lot of what you're seeing here is it was really great. Actually, I'll just show you. So even turning off the the paint, using the pull brush, I'm gonna go to a lower subdivision level where there's a little less. Oh God, recalculate. You can see that you can do exactly what you're talking about. Very pale man. So yes, you can actually use this for anything. It's not just for cloth. Obviously, it's called a cloth brush, but just treat it almost like a gravity fold wrinkle brush, and you can totally do that. So we got this guy, this guy. I want to pull these sleeves back up quite a bit. Use the actual cloth brushes, but I kind of don't want to if possible. I could use maybe the pull brush at this point to because what the pull brush does, it's really good, is it doesn't pull past the length of what the fabric is, or what the fabric is now, right? So if there's, I rolled over my headphones, hang on. If there's a fabric length, it will pull it. It'll like pull it taut, right? Rather than the move brush, the cloth move brush, which is here, will pull it and continue to pull it pretty far, and it'll really pull like things even that are outside of the sphere. So you would like see it here. I'm pulling at the corner. There's no way my brush should hit that, but if I pull far enough, it's affecting far, far beyond that. I'm using the cloth move brush right now because when I move it, it still has some of this elements that I'm looking for. I can still create all these bunches if I want. I don't really want that right now. I kind of like this looseness that's been created. I'm going to push this inside. And honestly, the new sculpting cloth was never my strong suit. I'm okay at it, right? Sculpting it from scratch, marvelous. I'm okay at it. Um, but the new dynamic features have really, really opened up the ability, especially to quickly mock out costumes, to quickly do costumes, to get something that looks decent in a very, very fast amount of time. Honestly, I was talking to the Pixelogic guys. I was skeptical at first. You know, you see a promotion video and you're like, okay, like, what are you doing there? There's got to be something, but it's pretty much what you see. Very cool stuff. At this point, I'm just kind of sculpting on top. There's something about a sim, right, or dynamics, and what it gives you, and the accuracy of that is something that you want to keep in mind, but you never want to sacrifice the overall look just for accuracy's sake, right? Having worked with costume designers, you know, even if the person's body, you know, you're always adjusting the person's body to look the best it can, whether that's inserts, whether that's padding, right, whether that's all different kinds of things, hemming things, tightening, you know, tailoring something so that it feels better to them. That is always something you want to do to make them look as the best that they can, and that's really the goal, is make your character look the best they can. Don't be, you know, don't feel like if you're doing sims or dynamics or something like that, that you have to keep what's there, because then you'll be really burdened. You'll be trapped, right? You're not, you know, especially in CG, unless you're for some reason working to make an actual physical costume with, you know, prints that you're going to cut. You know, you're actually going to cut and sew together or something. You're not by any means burdened to keep whatever you have. So, not worth all that extra hassle. Sculpt it once it's done. We can come in and we can, like, I'm just looking for different folds here. Kind of liking this asymmetry fold. There's no subdivisions levels on this. If I subdivide it, this is kind of what it'll look like. Pretty good. And all these levels seem to work on the brushes as well. So like self-collision, you know, direction, all that stuff seems to be affected on the brush. You can go down to each individual level. There you go. Feels a little better. Sometimes I'm just coming in here like basically just grabbing and like moving it. Ooh. So we got this. We're gonna give this dude some color, like a dark, match his hair, just a little darker than his hair. Okay, where are we at? We had a shirt. Not sure about that blue. But we can get into this coat. So the last piece that we're going to work on today is probably just this coat. We got about 40 minutes left, and the coat is going to be probably one of the, we'll see if it's one of the easier or more difficult. I'm just going to recalculate. If I run it right now, what you're going to see is it's going to stick to everything else, and that's not terrible, right? Kind of this idea that it's running exactly the opposite of, you know, when it started simming across the front of the body is almost exactly what I wanted. These little folds that are happening at the front is great. This is all working really well. I'll probably just punch some of this up. This all needs to like go up quite a ways. At this point, we can use the move brush. We can use masking. Like I can mask half of this off. It's not symmetrical anyways. We can either use the move brush or you can use the cloth move brush, which will give us different things. The firmness is something you can do to also work on different types of fabric. So if this is feeling like it's a little thin, something we could do is we could turn the firmness up and just as a test hit run sim and see if it changes the way that it lies. It'll also definitely play into, when we start moving things around. So like I'm going to take this sleeve here. And I'm going to use that move brush. And I'm going to do the pull brush. That firmness is a little high, I think. So you see the difference between the firmness being all the way at the top and the firmness not being at the top. Now, if you want it to be a thick leather jacket, maybe it can only create certain types of folds, and you kind of have to deal with that. But you can always just crank this down and then adjust it as you need. A little further on this arm. Just this. Isolate this thing. I'm just going to mask this arm off. Bring the firmness up one slider at a time. That 4 feels like it's giving me more of like what I would expect from like a leather, or this is giving me more what I would expect out of like a thicker leather. So I'm going to flip between those two until it gives me kind of what I want. I can come in here and smooth whenever. I don't need to keep all those little artifacts. And also I can remove like his undershirt if I need to focus on that. The undershirt would be smashed, right? It would be completely obliterated by all the details on it would be pressed to his body. So trying not to stay too tight to it if possible. So now I can decide like on this glove. Well, I guess I'll do this one really quickly as well. It's really insane. Like I'm just grabbing the sleeve and pushing it up. Honestly, that's insane. And we need this to go through there. The things we're running into right now. Probably have to get rid of that inside here in a minute. This is going to start poking through as well, and we'll have to adjust that. Another thing we can almost like maybe we pull this back. Like, let's see what happens if we use this. Firmness down. Simply trying to stick to that. What I might need to do is hide the gloves, show the body, hide the arms, come in here, recalculate. This is basically saying, what am I calculating against? What am I simming against? And now if I move this, I can move it like out of the way. And that's going to be a little easier. So unmask this. I try to mask these arms entirely. I don't want to come over here now that I've got this. The sim. What you're going to notice is going to lose all this stuff, and that sucks. I don't want that, right? So what I can do is I can go in here, go to morph target, store morph target. Now if I run the sim, and it can do all whatever it needs. The firmness is probably a little low. It's going to straighten some of this out. Maybe not everything we want, right? Like let's just smooth this thing. Run sim. Looks like it's having some issues with something. Getting a little better in there. Whether it's the length or whatever exactly it is. I like the length that it is now, actually. Maybe I just pull some of this in. All this can be tweaked. So we're feeling good about it. Like I might pull this back a little, smooth some of that, pull it back. There's something going on there. I can pull this back. But I can use that morph target. So now I can go to BMO is morph target, or just BM, and you'll find the morph target brush here. What this is it switches. It's basically kept this one, and it's kept this one. So I can come in here, and I can just switch between them, right? But the brush, basically thinking of it like camera A, camera B. And so what that means is if I'm brushing on A, it's going to B. If I'm going on B, it's going to A. So this is the new sim. I like how it looks at the bottom as compared to this one. So what I can do is I can just brush. That's going to use color right now. Brush the top and keep the top where I want it. I can use a big fall off as well, right? I don't have to keep the whole thing. I like some of the tightness of what this was. And now I'm going to come in here and we'll show this. Get those gloves back. One other thing I'm just going to push in. Oh, I have morph brush on. Like this stuff I'm probably just going to hide or push it in. Right. Also make a layer. There's a bunch of different ways you could do this. Ooh. Sleeveless coat. That feels very barred to me. Mm-hmm. Should we do brown? We'll make it this color. Or maybe it's like, I got a statement piece. All right, so I think this is kind of fun. I like the idea of this. I mean, we can also put it in here as well. Puffy sleeves, another good option for us. Also very happy with this.
This is my first time.
You know, we could do this kind of a thing. We could do, what else could we do? Let's do, What I want to do here is like explore the idea of, like, this obviously could be one shirt at this point. I'm going to duplicate that whole jacket so I'm not destroying it. Pull this up, figure out where that would go. Just exploring and like finding happy accidents when they happen, trying to capitalize on them or keep them. Even in the hands, we could do this. We could take, you know, any of these pull brushes, these move brushes. I like the idea of these being bigger, swashbuckling ones.
Hello again. Thanks for listening to the album. Hope you enjoyed it. See you.
Curious about how much time I'm typically given to complete something like this for a job. Do you recommend showing clients work in progress or not? Well, most of your clients are probably going to want to see work in progress at a certain point, unless they just really are in love with your work and they just want you to do you, which if that's the case, then amazing. That's great. But you're definitely going to have clients who are going to demand seeing the work in progress for sure. No questions asked. So that's probably the starting point on that. This isn't really a project with a specific goal. You know, we're just kind of making some stuff, but if it were to make a concept for a character, right, or to model a character, it really depends. You know, certain characters you'll take, if you're a character artist, you could be given a month or more of time. If you're a concept artist to do something like this, you're not going to be given more than, you know, a day or a couple days to do a concept piece. So it really just does depend on what the work is. Pulse on at once. There you go. Yeah, somebody in the chat, Keyboard Oreos, is saying, just to bring into perspective, they have 1 month to complete a full character with assets. It just depends. This guy should have big boots now too. I think you should have darker eyes. Let's get into some paint work here in a sec after we've got this jacket done. Or this, no, it's not even a jacket anymore. It's a blousey shirt. All right. We do have this jacket, which I could still do something with. Maybe this is like a coat he wears occasionally, right? Kind of just need to be like puffed up on everything. Kind of like this. I kind of like these elements of it, but I also am digging the not having to do the coat element. I think there's a fun, there's just something I like about not having the coat. You could have a vest. Maybe he's wearing a vest on top. You know, if it's something that's like this almost. Getting into some layers. Yeah, get some rips and tears in there. You know, we could do like, I've definitely broken what the intent of this was originally, but that's fine. Yeah, but we could do something like this, where it's sticking up and over and you think the full jacket, or you think like the vest? Hard to see that. Neck caps are difficult because they don't actually receive light correctly. Bandolier. Oh, we did want that bandolier. That's right. Kind of like this little vest more than the full length thing. Full length thing is very iconic, right? But I kind of like this. I feel like this would be like an alternative look, but not the full-time look. I think this is like his full-time look. You know, we could have some rips and tears in here at this point. Now we could come in here with like, we'll turn this color off of everything, burn everything up so we can kind of see it. We'll get into like this pull, so a little bit more life in this thing. So we'll stick with this for now. And what did I want to do earlier? That's right. I wanted to take a, can I get a ring? I think I can. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go to cylinder. Under here, you can see all different types of things. Initialize is one of those. And one of those is you can do an inner radius. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to make polymesh 3D. Come back in here with our guy. I'm going to subtool append this. I'm going to smash it, rotate it, and then at this point I'm just going to move it around. Probably, mask this off in an easier way. And some subdivision levels to this, just so it has some structure to it. Now where we want it. Let's try this. As always, once I get to certain points, I get a little paranoid with my saves. A little loose. Turning the firmness on, I'm turning self-collision up quite a bit. Good to know that it's really just slipping right in there. Firmness all the way up, collisions up. It's also running very fast, so I might need to turn the strength down. Oh, that's actually the strength of the fabric. Sorry, sim iterations. Nope, I lied. The gravity strength, that's what I'm thinking. It was at 10 to begin with. Let's put it at 4. Stop it quickly. Get over. It's having a little too much of the inside. And I think that's because it's what it was when I had it. If this was thinner, I'd be a little more successful here. It is starting to like kind of tear it a little bit when it moves. Hey, before we do that, let me just try this. B cloth pull. This is doing exactly what we want anyways. The move brush, the cloth move brush. Yeah, it's about the same. That's where it would be, though. It's interesting. I would have expected it to stay on the shoulder. And I could come over here and just mask it and run it, and that would change the sim, right? Because it's basically being pinned then at that point. Kind of interesting that's how it works. I want that vest there. That feels better. Then I'll put the vest back. We want it underneath. No, it's gotta go on top. This would probably be easier to just make a thing. Like ZBrush just like use the actual thing rather than try to do all this sim. I very likely could have sculpted that much faster. But you know, it's what it is. All right, we'll make it that color. We're gonna append a cube. And we could give him like a holster. Or a hip guard or a belt or something. This would be an easy way to like make a quick pouch. All right. Let's do a quick another one of these. I'm gonna try this shrink. Allow shrink. I don't know exactly what this is gonna do. Nothing. Cool. What if I set the direction up? I mean, it's doing something. It's not exactly what I wanted. Deflate. See, there's a deflate. Let's try this again. I set the direction wrong. Set direction. Incorrect. Shrunk into oblivion. We'll figure that out. I know there's a way to shrink it to the object. I just don't know what it is right now. So we'll have to play with that later. Push this in. Just kind of sculpt it in real quick. Right? Maybe use one of those fancy brushes. Give a little texture to it. And then we got to add in one more. Where did it go? Go ahead, two more. And another one. This is going to go like here. make it that color. Then we got to append one more. This one we're going to do this too. There are other ways to do what I'm doing. This is the fast. I have 8 minutes left in the stream version. What we said a sham sort of looks like. Sculptors Pro coming in handy. So you can't see things. God. Compact sham. Where is that? More yellow. Just to show that it's a different object. There we go. All right, so that is our character. We are pretty much done. We got 5 minutes left. So kind of fun to just kind of come up with a character randomly and almost be forced to, kind of be forced to do something that you weren't thinking about, right? So if you're interested in doing sketches, I hear a lot of questions about quantity versus quality, questions about like good practice things to do. What's a good, what is a good exercise that you could do, right? That's a good thing that kind of happens a lot. And it's there's a lot of things you can do, and I think that either sculpting things from concepts is always a really good idea to do, to kind of practice your stuff that you're doing. That's just a good idea to practice, but giving yourself a prompt that has a little bit of a character, a little bit of a story to it, so that you can come in and make something that you might not have normally thought of when you first started, and gives you enough to play off of for sure. It gives you enough to say like, this is what I think I want to make. Now, I'd probably want to come back in. This is in doing so, you're not always going to make the best piece you've ever made, right? I don't expect to make a portfolio piece like this, but it's a good practice session to get your brain thinking about what you need to do to get there. Here we go. This is one of our characters that we did this stream. We're just going to put them all up here. So this is like our villain and his little weird hood, which should probably be another color, really. This even darker. So we got our villain. We've got our half-orc rogue that we sculpted last session. And now we have his buddy. kind of get all three of them in there. And as we go, we could make more characters like this. You can make a whole party like this. This is a just kind of a fun way to explore characters. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you for being here today on the stream with Gnomon. We have some fun stuff coming up soon, so keep staying tuned. We do Art Jam every Wednesday from 10 to 1, just like today. And we also have an event coming up soon with Olivier Dubard, who's going to show off some of his awesome process for doing a Death Dealer inspired sequence. And I believe that's actually tomorrow here on our page from I think 7 to 10 ish on our Twitch stream. So take a look at our social media for more details on that. But it's available there. And thank you again for being here, and I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me and asking questions and chatting. So I'll see you guys next week. Thanks again. Stay safe out there.